I have to keep my children safe.
This side of the planet seems less intent on killing our children.
Father once said to me, if you pretend to be something long enough, eventually you'll no longer need to pretend.
I fear we're becoming too human to be the parents that our children deserve.
We have to think of the future now.
You need to form your own ideas.
When the trust passes the baton, you'll be the one to take it.
I'm gonna convert them all, one at a time if I have to.
I miss being able to believe that there's someone out there listening. Someone with the power to make things all better.
When are we going to tell them what we discovered?
I have to keep my children safe.
I am the prophet. Nothing can stand against me. To be worthy of soul's loved children, you only need faith. And that is one thing that this robot can never take away from us.
Love is the death of us all.
For another exclusive, author and podcaster Geoffrey D. Calhoun joins us tonight. Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir.
Hello, thank you.
Let's raise the roof off this bitch. So we are talking HBO Max's original series, Raised by Wolves, from Ridley Scott. So first off, Geoffrey, were you already kind of a big sci-fi, horror, or cyberpunk author for that kind of matter?
Yeah, man, I'm a big fan of sci-fi. I think it's a great vehicle to discuss current events because you can hide it through science fiction, but it's relatable enough that you can sneak in kind of like thematic messages to the audience.
It's like the only way you get people to just shut up and just like take it at face value.
Yeah,
George Romero does it with his zombies, and
exactly.
I got to go to old hard sci-fi like The Expanse or even Forbidden Planet just to talk about anything. It's the best way.
Yeah, wage disparity, religion, politics. You can cover all of that stuff in science fiction. And Ridley Scott is my favorite director. So it was great to see him come on this show as a producer and a director.
Yeah, and it was funny how instantly the various articles were speculating, oh, this might be in the same universe as Blade Runner Alien.
Yeah.
Years ago, where he's like, yeah, the Yutani industry is technically, in my mind, the same industry of the replicants in Blade Runner, but no, this ain't got nothing to do with either of these. I'm doing 2 episodes to start it off, and then I'm giving it to the rest of these guys.
Yeah, well, it's because he came on to direct and produce it, so it was created by Aaron Guzikowski. So this is like his baby. So I'm not surprised that the universes aren't related. But what was kind of really neat is that Ridley Scott brought his son on to direct the first couple episodes in season 1 as well, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, his son had been doing a lot of second unit assistant directing for his projects, and the cast was very interesting. The British gal who's the main gal just has the perfect kind of way of just kind of a neutral face, which is what you need for a cyborg.
Yeah. So Amanda Collin plays Mother. She's Danish. And so that's why
Okay.
that
Wow.
accent, her accent is kind of different, you
My
know?
bad. I didn't-
No, it's fine. But yeah, she has that amazing lifeless smile that she brings on, which is I really have so much respect for just the way she presents herself on screen. I could see why they cast her immediately.
Totally. And Travis Fimmel from Vikings, he's used to being in ragged garb, and he's the human counterpart basically of the show. He's
I know.
studying her from afar, and he's afraid to get near her, and yet he knows he needs her as an ally against the alien entities that are plaguing the planet.
It's so crazy. So his journey, I think he's such a great actor. His journey in season 1 is really about a guy trying to fit in and find purpose.
Yeah.
And throughout that season, in season 1 at least, he starts to find that purpose, but then it kind of poisons him to the point to where he becomes almost like drunk with power.
He's kind of a robot without knowing it, because his humanity is kind of gone. He's just so isolated on this desolate planet, and he's
right.
First, he's not sure if he should conquer her, and then he realizes he sees what atrocities she's done to men who get near her kids. And then he's just like, okay, I'll just study her. And
I agree. I think his journey in season 1 was great, and then his journey in season 2 was just like mind blowing.
Totally. And the kids, for once, you got no annoying kids. Like they are literally more human than their mother. They are so used to adapting and seeing various traits. And this is basically, I mean, I can totally see why HBO picked this up. They needed something to build on share the ratings with Westworld. It's just that same kind of logic. And I feel like it even harkens back a little bit to the best elements of, say, a Philip K. Dick or Isaac Asimov or Arthur C. Clarke novel, where you're just survival. Now, at first, I was a little annoyed by the slow burn, but I still give it a total recommend, just because this is, again, harkening back to an old school kind of sci-fi novel. And I read a bunch of sci-fi growing up, along with mystery. And I don't mean to sound like a jerk, but as much action and horror as I consume, I could never really read them. It would bore me for whatever reason. It just didn't elicit well, because it's just a visual medium when it comes to horror and action for me. And I was really creeped out by the aliens in this. Even though this is a sci-fi show, that they have like a Chthalo thing when they're trying to merge with the replicants and like still their, basically suck their electronic, juices basically. And
the fuel blood was fascinating. So I agree that a show like this, it has to be a slow burn, because what I can say I appreciate about it is that the creators of the show really created what feels like a real world. It feels like you understand every character is developed. You understand the mythology behind the Mithraic religion and then the atheistic culture and how they clash. So you understand everything. And what I thought was cool, instead of starting the show on that planet Earth, we start on this dead planet.
Yeah, they crash.
They crash, and then they birth the babies, and then we see how they're parents, and we see the kids dying. And as we see the kids dying, we see the desperation on the androids. And because of that, we start to emotionally get behind what they're trying to do. They're trying to save humanity in the only way they know how. And then you get Campion, who develops this personality of a survivor and eventually grows into that kind of centrist character who's both has the strength of the atheists and the strengths of the Mithraics, which I thought was great.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that. I was mainly just studying how they're, copying human, repopulation, and
well, so thematically, this story is about, atheistic culture and about religious culture and about how those clash, and they set that up in this show that both cultures end up destroying the earth because of the way they disagree. So science versus religion, right? I mean, you can't get any more primal than that. And so we end up on this new planet where they get a fresh start, but then again, they clash. Now, what's really cool with this is that we get to see it almost as a fresh start as they're bringing all of this in together. But then you add on all of the intrigue of this god that they worship, Soul. But now he's talking to certain people, and it's almost like Soul is real on this planet. But maybe the way that Soul is going about doing things is pretty evil. So now you start thinking, oh my God, this is an evil god that has infiltrated the human race. So they are talking about so much here. And when you have a theme like that, you have the extremes. So you have Mother, who is the cold, calculating robot. Then you have Marcus, who is the fervent religious figure who has lost his moral compass, as he said, for his God. And then you have Campion, who is dead center in the middle. And you bring in all of the other kids, and they all have different perspectives on that overall theme. And that's what really builds out the lore and the humanity behind the show. And it works so well. And they double down on it in season 2.
Yeah, season 2 is like, as soon as everything's out of the bag, now they're just like, okay, gotten your attention. Let's do a quicker season. And then let's...
I lost you for a sec.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm right here. But yeah, how about now?
See
Can you
what's
hear me
going
now?
on here.
Can you hear me now? How about now?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, I'm not sure what happened with my connection, but yeah, no, like you say, it's like now that you know everything and we've given you all the juice, let's have a shorter season and do just kind of more resolution. And have they picked up a third season?
So one thing with these shows is you want to nail the finale, right? You want to get that season finale down to build intrigue and to build, the audience interest and to get the studio's interest in renewing. Season 1's finale was incredible. I was just like, God, I hope they pick it up. They picked it up. I was so excited.
And I thank you for having me research this one.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Season 2's finale was shocking because
all comes to a giant close.
Yeah, Travis Fimmel's 2-season arc of him finding this religion, going deep into this religion, becoming the head of this religion, like the Pope for where people are worshiping not just Soul, but they're worshiping him as like Soul's and living embodiment, essentially. And then him coming to terms with the fact that Soul is evil and he turns away from Soul, that completely finishes his arc as a character. And when that happens, you kill a character, right? Because they have nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
Or you start them rolling on a new arc. Okay. So I was like, oh, I was happy and sad. I was like, oh, his arc is over. So I knew where it was going. So when we get to the ending, I'm like, yeah, okay, all of that makes sense. But then you cut to the last seconds when you see him and you're like, what the hell? So I thought it was fantastic. I don't know if it's been picked up for a third season. From what I understand, they are leaning towards it. I know season 2 was picked up right away. They picked it up.
The numbers have been there, so
yeah. Well, it made critical reviews. I mean, people love season 2, so I think they'll get it. And the reason why they cut down on episodes from 10 to 8 in season 2 is to up the budget. So you get so much budget per season, right?
Mhm.
And so instead of extending that budget to 10 episodes, you cut it down to 8, but that allows you to have 8 bigger episodes budget wise.
Okay, gotcha. Well, and more or less, yeah, as we saw with shows that came back, that it's also just easier for everyone to just want to recreate all that magic when it's just a shorter runtime.
Yeah.
Like you say, I mean, they didn't know if this would be their last year or not, so best not to tempt fate. Just let it all out of the bottle.
No, I thought it was great. And his wife in the show, Sue, who is really very much like the heart of the show as far as campy, and it's her discovering her inner motherhood as a human perspective. So they were going to kill her off season 1.
Oh, really?
But that actor is so great. She was in a film called Censor, which I don't know if you've had a chance to watch it, but sounds like you like horror.
Pretty edgy.
Yeah. Okay. So you saw it. She did a great performance, and obviously she's really talented. So they didn't kill her off in season 1. They built out her arc in season 2 to that, I mean, tragic but shocking conclusion.
Yeah.
I was just like, this is amazing. This is terrible.
Well, and like you say, I mean, when a character is basically revealed everything, is like now it's up to the main character who's been a wimp the entire time to now muscle up. And I think spy movies do it well. I think demonic possession or home invasion movies do it well. It just calls for the beloved or flawed character seeking redemption. That's the only way they can go in terms of their lifespan on screen. They gotta sacrifice themselves or be killed by the entity, or die suddenly. Other characters avenge them.
Yeah. Yeah. I really want to see this one hit a season 3 because and
season 5, because it doesn't have to be like Game of Thrones or anything else which involves a kingdom conquering and then not sure where else to go. And then is like with this is like they could go to another planet, they could go to some apocalyptic version of Earth, they could go to something else that they think is sacred or is literally a giant computer planet.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I have a feeling that it'll come to a hard conclusion, possibly in the next season, because these shows are so hard to get renewed. We'll see. I mean, if you look at like Westworld got what, I think 3 seasons. I think they wanted to go longer, they just couldn't. So they gave you that big conclusion at the end of Westworld. So I could see something like that happening. I think
which is so wild because their previous show, Jonathan Nolan and Links of Joy, his previous show, was Person of Interest, and they intended that as a 6-season arc, and got their wish because they were able to do the impossible. They were able to get people who thought it was just a simple cop show to tune in, and people who wanted a Matrix, X-Files kind of show kept tuning in because it was serialized. There was some giant puzzle piece to solve each week, and then when they started shortening the episodes, they still had it outlined as like one of the main characters is gonna again have to give his life, and they're gonna have to determine, does the machine that is the supercomputer they have to keep in line get shut down, or is it a half victory?
Exactly.
And that's why I thought it was successful regardless of the cast changes and contract renewals. And
exactly. I mean, typically with these shows they outline for 3, but they plan for 5 seasons.
Right.
Yeah.
And overall, I mean, this could even just go even further. Like they could probably do kind of what many other shows have done for years, whether they're online or network shows, that they could do kind of little mini chapters mini shorts like they did with the recent Blade Runner, where they just like give a little character backstory and in between awaiting each episode. But I don't know if that's in the plans or budget, but that would be fun.
No, I think it's a good idea if you have a really unique and interesting IP like this, that you have opportunity to build out for spin-offs. And
Kind of like how you would
it's brand building.
Brand building, kind of like how you would buy the novelization of a movie just so it would fill in the plot holes or what got left on the cutting room floor and build the world of it.
No, absolutely. And I just think it's fascinating. I mean, the creator, is doing things like with the atheist religion. He's taking Mother, for instance, and he puts her in this, crucifix Jesus-like pose all the time. When she opens her arms for a hug from her children, or when she flies, she's always in this Jesus-like pose. And after she saves the day in season 2, you have kids making symbols out of her. Even though they're atheists, they're deifying her.
They have no one else to turn to.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating, the world building elements that he has of this. Yeah. So there's places to go.
She's like Skynet from the Terminator films mixed with the T-1000.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Oh God. And it almost kind of makes one wish that, for whatever reason, just like, I don't know, like whenever someone comes out with sci-fi, it basically always takes an action thing and the philosophical ideas get tossed out, unfortunately, because at that point everyone wants carnage and explosions. And it's just a shame, because when I talk to people about sci-fi, very few of them, unless they're fans of something like The Expanse or Westworld, just seem to think, oh, sci-fi, that's just, Star Wars, bang, bang, kaboom, spaceships. Is like, no, not necessarily. It can be, traveling, it can be scientific, for real, sci-fi, and it can show, again, like you say, just cultures and colonies and survival of some kind. Like I think another show that does these themes pretty well is C, which is on Apple TV, and shows various cultures where people are drinking contaminated water and they've all lost their vision. So again, all they got are like their remaining senses.
Oh wow.
But it does this same kind of things where they're like, I answer to you, modern day cavemen. And it's just very well casted. Jason Momoa, Bautista, and Alfred Woodard, of all people. Just
nice.
All excellent. And same kind of concepts as the newer Battlestar Galactica, where you can take it all very seriously. It's not a terrible, Mad Max or Waterworld kind of thing, where it's the ideas are there, but the execution isn't. It's
I gotcha.
Pretty
concise. I mean, that shows you the big difference there.
Yeah, it's not junky. It's not guilty pleasure. It's fun. And I think it's just sci-fi is just the way to go in terms of TV, because you can do fun stuff here and there, but they just don't seem to. I had one pal who was even complaining, especially when they saw all the Star Trek shows going straight to streaming, and they're like, "Oh, why do they do that? Did they not respect us as fans?" I'm like, because sci-fi just does not do well on network TV. The channels don't know how to market it or schedule it. It just never catches on.
Well, streaming is the new thing, man. I mean,
it's just
what it is. Everybody's really kind of cut the cable. So,
and you can guarantee subscribers at least 10K within the first week if you catch their eyes with an ad. And I mean, if you say a filmmaker from the so and so presents, then
so Netflix really started the game. Amazon came on after that. They came on late, but everybody pretty much thought, oh, this is a fluke. Netflix was able to capitalize on it because they started with DVDs and they didn't think anything of it. But when you had Disney Plus come out and they saw the huge push for Disney Plus, and they saw how Disney really decided to take their ailing Star Wars franchise from theaters and push it into streaming, and how that really allowed for a new breath to be brought into that series, so that people were actually like excited about Star Wars again.
Have you encountered people who haven't even seen Star Wars before and they've seen Mondo and then they wanted to go back to all the movies?
I met somebody.
I met that with even the Star Trek fans.
I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I met somebody who did not know what Yoda was. And I was like, I can't even talk to you right now. You don't know who Yoda is? And I said, no. I was like, little green dude with a light sword. And she goes, no, he like talks backwards. I have no idea. I said, okay, I think we're done here. I can't even relate on the fundamental level. Yeah. So, but when Disney Plus came out and showed that you could do that, then all of these other streamers started going, okay, so then you get Paramount Plus and you've even got news stations now going full streaming. So yeah, they're all really realizing that.
And they learned fast that first year. They're like, we can't do this again.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think it's going to improve. And For All Mankind's another good one. Ronald D. Moore, who had worked on the Star Trek shows and the new Battlestar, he came up with this alternate universe where, in a perfect world, what would have happened if Russia and the U.S., had a successful space program? Yeah, it's on Apple also. And
I haven't looked at that one yet. That's cool. I really like Ronald D. Moore. He's awesome. He got his first gig on Star Trek.
Yep.
Next gen by sending them
Klingon episodes.
He sent them a spec. Mm-hmm. He sent them a sample script and they hired him, which that doesn't happen now.
And they're very self-critical. He and Brandon Braga and all those other guys, they got, hot takes at first, but they were just screenwriters first versus, just fanboys who, made it big. They knew how to channel their passions. Well, like you say, you're a screenwriter and I've done screenwriting too. And if you can't critique your own shit, then, just stop now. You can't, the ego is only good for so long before, the stroking, stops. You got to be able to just say, why does everyone else react to this? How can I take this character apart and keep the momentum of the material just going?
Yeah, if you want to talk about that, we can talk about that. So for me, it's the difference between being an amateur and a hobbyist. I'm sorry, between being an amateur hobbyist and a professional. So a professional can take notes and can criticize themselves. So, when I work with a production company or director, because I have a film shooting this summer.
Congrats.
Thanks. When I get notes from a director, I take those notes and I change the story because I'm working with them. A screenplay is an invite for collaboration. That's really what a screenplay is. But when you're a hobbyist or you're an amateur, you can't take the criticism and may even hide behind being an artist, which that drives me nuts. So
I can't do it either.
If you're calling yourself an artist and they're trying to change your art,
I'm afraid you'll steal it, which is their way of, I know it sucks, but I don't want your 2 cents.
Well, there's nothing original.
No.
You can't copyright an idea. If you could, there was only be one vampire movie ever that was made.
Yeah, very much. And just fess up. Just like, I don't know. I know this is missing something. I need you to sit down and rip me a new one. I'm happy to let you do it.
And take your attachment out of it. Like, you can't take it personally.
And so many do. And often, if you're listening enough, you can typically even tell, the inexperienced guy who hates anything from the person who is the key audience, the key demographic who would normally like to see something like this. And they're saying, this just reminds me of this, which is not what I like about the genre or what have you,
Yeah. Yeah. If you're,
unfortunately, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine.
If you many they just can't tell it apart. They're just like, I need this, I need that.
Yeah. They can't take the notes. And if they can't take the notes, then you have to essentially be making stuff yourself on your own.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't, because that's what a screenplay is. It's collaboration. If you can't collaborate with anybody, then you need to make your own stuff.
I did a gangster revenge part fugitive kind of movie.
Oh, cool.
Script. And the ones who were very cynical just, didn't really like action or stuff like that. So I was like, okay, I'm not really weighing that on much, but I kept getting notes on, I need a little more, just like one or two more scenes with this guy, getting inside their head. I was like, okay, I'm feeling that.
I lost you again.
So it was like, and one gal I could tell didn't even read past the first page. She did the whole, well, I'm not sure you would, you're not writing this very believable, even though I had inserted some subtext explaining that the person was an ex-con, so therefore, they were being very secretive and,
Not even past the first page is pretty terrible. I've received notes from...
You can tell. You really can. Because when you explain something or have an extra line of dialogue, you can tell they just skim read it. And it's like, okay. So I get that I don't have your attention. But, I mean, it doesn't ever hurt to just reread it just in case.
It's so much to ask somebody to read a script. It takes me 2 hours to read a screenplay. So you have to sit there and you have to really focus.
Oh, yeah.
It can be a lot. And the hardest part is when you get a screenplay that is overloaded with too much stuff. So then you start getting lost and then you have to start taking notes. That's always pretty difficult. Because
5 characters. That's it.
Yeah. Because now I'm like, okay, now I have to take notes on what's going on so that they know I read the story. Even though I'm like super confused. Yeah.
That, and I don't know, just like, I often write down what I take a cue from one of my screenwriting professors. I write down what's working right now. It's like, that's a kick-ass first opening line. I don't think anyone's ever used that witty a one-liner before. And then I look at the other ones like, yeah, but I really don't care how this ends. It just feels a little too robotic. And I don't know if it's just over familiar or what, but
yeah, that can be difficult.
That can be figured out.
Strike the balance. Yeah.
And now let me ask you this. Like, this show, for instance, did good use of montages. Why do you think so many screenwriters frown or filmmakers frown on montages, even though that's been proven to be very good, whether it's a popcorn movie like Rocky IV or a key movie like Fruitvale Station, just showing the essence of a life of a man who's doomed for failure,
One montage is fine. If you're going to throw one in there during a film,
just
if you start getting
too much.
if you start getting 2 or 3, it's just lazy writing. That's all it is. It's like
or just uninspired music video.
you can't come up with a better way to tell the story, so you just montage the hell out of this thing, and it's just too much. It's overwhelming, and it keeps taking you out. It takes away from the impact of the montage. Like a good montage, if you look at the opening montage of Up, will make you cry or will make you laugh or smile, because the whole point is to show something over time, but the emotional impact of it in a quick way. So if you keep using that over and over and over, each time you use it, it's less and less effective.
Mm-hmm. That, and I guess we've seen so many tricks, and how much of it is glossiness versus substantial.
Yeah, right.
Thank you for being on here and just having fun with this.
Oh yeah, man, it was a good show. I appreciate chatting with you, Cam.
Yeah, and this was a fun setup because this is one show where it pretty much writes itself, and you're just along for the ride, just observing it, as opposed to, whoa, hold on a minute. You got to watch various episodes 5 different times just to make sense of it. Finally, it's like, no, it's not that kind of thing.
No, I think it grabs you, and they build up enough mystery and intrigue that you want to know what's going on. And the characters are fascinating. The acting is great. The sets are beautiful. I mean, it has everything, and it starts to build, and it gets weird. And that's kind of what makes it great, is that it's just weird. Like, you can't find really anything else out there like this, because studios won't take a chance on something like this because it's different. It's like, oh, it's not your typical sci-fi.
We gotta have it be like John Wick or Taken or
Yeah.
something else crazy, Walking Dead or
Yeah. I mean, it's really an original show, and I think that is what's so beautiful about it. So anybody getting into this is getting into something that is going to take them to a whole new experience, which is hard to pull off nowadays.
Absolutely. And I'm going to let you plug your book that you have.
Oh yeah, sure. So the Guide for Every Screenwriter is a reference guide that I've written that was just listed as the best screenwriting book of all time by the Book Authority. It's on a list of top 100. And it is an all-encompassing guide on screenwriting. So it breaks down the mysteries of screenwriting and can walk you through the entire process of how to do it and become a screenwriter in an easy to understand and accessible way.
Okay, very cool. And you just found it in your passion. You just want to teach other people tools of the tricks, tricks of the trade.
Yeah, I love teaching. I am a screenwriting instructor. I also do mentorships. I initially was hired to fly down to Ghana and teach screenwriting, which was the birth of the Guide for Every Screenwriter. And I host my podcast, the Successful Screenwriter Podcast, which you could find anywhere. And I interview Hollywood screenwriters, indie screenwriters, directors, and like I have people from Netflix shows who come on and talk about the industry and how they broke in and really break down different ways to get into screenwriting and find your own success. So it's pretty awesome.
And like you say, I mean, that's what I do when I invite anyone, whether it's a makeup artist or a stunt performer or, some kind of filmmaker, is like, you want a little just of that emphasis. Like, what keeps you going? What makes you just say, hey, I want to get up in the morning and I want to just do something life-changing and other people will enjoy it,
I think in something like this, it's really important to show different avenues of how people have gotten to where they are. So that way it really takes away that mystery. A lot of what I do is breaking things down in the simplest way so that people can see that this is something that's possible. Whether you want to be...
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because there are so many people that are like, I can't do that. I've been able to cycle through who are my serious pals and who are just, full of shit. And I notice the ones who are just not prospering are so worried about their budget. And it's like, I'll put it to you this way. If you can't use your imagination, just stop now. Because you can't get caught up in this budget or doing the whole, well, I'm waiting on to hear back from one of my friends, who hasn't given me a yes answer yet, or I want to get this actor in it. It's like, well, you have to start small, and then you can try and aim big based on whatever earnings you made from whatever distribution deal. You can't do that. I look at it like an eBay bid. I'm willing to pay this much. I can afford to pay this much. So that's as high as my offer is going to be. And if they want to upcharge me and say, no, you're willing to bid, 10,000, but we want 40,000, I just have to, cut my losses and say, no, I can't do this.
Yeah. I mean, I really believe in strategizing. When you're writing a script, what you're doing, really look at why you're doing it. Is this practice? Is this something for me to become better as a writer? Is this expression? Is this cathartic for me? Is this something I need to get on the page for me to process internally? Is this something I'm trying to sell? Is this a writing sample? Like, what are you doing and why are you doing it? And a great example I like to look at is like Willy's Wonderland, right? It's a great horror movie. It stars Nicolas Cage. And Nicolas Cage has no lines in the movie. And that's because the writer-director really wanted Nick Cage for this film. He wanted to work with Nick Cage. He wanted to make a Nick Cage film. So he approached Nick Cage's agent and said, how much is Nick Cage? And he said, okay, this is how much Nick Cage is for shooting. He goes, what's the cheapest I can get Nick Cage if like he doesn't say any dialogue. And so then they, okay, if he doesn't do any dialogue, it's this much a day. He said, okay, great, I'll do that. So he wrote a script with the central character has no dialogue, so that because he knew he could get the money to pay Nick Cage to do that film.
And I think that is because you got to compromise, but you also know, hey, I can't afford to do this.
Right, but he made it happen. He has this movie. He knew he can get that kind of money. He got the money. He has a Nick Cage movie, and it's fucking great. It's a funny, scary horror movie with a really interesting performance from Nick Cage. So he got everything he wanted to do out of it. Because he knew where he wanted to go and he knew what he could do. So when I approach a project, that's how I approach it.
Makes sense. And like you say, I mean, I think everyone's just getting so tired. Like Amazon has stopped, for instance, accepting, independent movies anymore.
Yeah, they're done.
They're cleaning shop. They're just like, no more, poorly, resolution photos. This is our brand too.
Yeah, when they first started, they were desperate for content because Netflix had a ton of stuff. Yep. So they opened the doors to indie filmmakers, and indie filmmakers really built Amazon Prime. They really did. And then they, over the next few years, they cut down payouts to the point to where it was pennies on the dollar. Because you had guys making a living off of their Amazon Prime films, and then overnight, practically, they lost all of that. And it was when Amazon got popular enough and enough budget to start making original shows, and that's when everything changed. So now you have all of these indie filmmakers going to places like Tubi to get paid
Tubi's
for their work.
For content, because one of their investors apparently is Fox. They're doing that. Whatever's not on Hulu, that's going there. Right.
And so what you're going to find in a couple of years, though, it's going to be the same thing. Tubi will start doing their own content, and they'll start pushing out the indie filmmaker. And then the indie filmmaker will have to find another avenue
once again
for their films. So, I mean, that's really unfortunately what's going on. But if you're an indie filmmaker and you've got something made and you can't get distribution on all the major streamers right now, Tubi's interested. So, of course, you're going to go there. You're trying to make a buck.
That's just it too. I've even had to explain the difference between independent films and direct-to-video. Is just like, and sometimes, again, now we're not even so much, not so much physical media anymore. So yeah, it's straight to streaming. If you're not going to the theater, you're going straight to streaming now. So, and that can be a good or a bad thing, depending on, the quality of the film.
It depends on what you're doing, and again, your strategy. I mean, there's indie films that have A-list Hollywood actors, and they got a $3 million budget. Okay, there's indie films that have a $30,000 budget, but they look really great, and there's a great cast. They're just unknown actors, right? So then you go, okay, what is my strategy? And you have to build in your strategy. I mean, from the ground up. You don't just make a movie and then say, okay, how do I distribute it? I mean, that you've failed. You sit down, you go, this is the script I have. Okay, what kind of actors can I get that can get this going in the right direction? Do I want a named actor so I can get a return on investment on that actor's name if I throw them on the poster?
You probably can't afford an A-lister, but can you afford a B-lister?
Right, exactly.
Michael J. White or Dolph Lundgren or Scott Adkins make a living doing movies that are basically half the budget of, say, a giant Denzel Washington or Liam Neeson revenge movie.
So there you go. So you get that, and then you strategize that into your distribution.
Right. Very well said. If only others took your advice, Yeah. Hopefully you keep spreading it, Once again, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening. It's a